November 2nd, 1944, 3:47 p.m. somewhere over Czechoslovakia. Lieutenant Bruce Carr watches the oil pressure gauge drop to zero. Black smoke pours from the cowling of his P-51 Mustang. The Merlin engine screams, metal grinding against metal. Just half a minute earlier he was commanding a strafing attack on a German airfield. Now death is staring him right in the face. A fragment from an 88mm flak shell had torn through the engine bay and ripped apart the oil line. Without that crucial oil, his Rolls-Royce Merlin has maybe 90 seconds before it completely locks up. Once that happens, the propeller transforms into a 400-pound dead weight, and his beloved P-51 turns into nothing more than a flying brick with terrible gliding capabilities. Carr's left with just one choice: abandon the aircraft. He yanks back the canopy, flips the dying Mustang upside down, and throws himself into the icy Czechoslovakian air. At 8,000 feet, his parachute opens with a violent jerk. Beneath him lies nothing but hostile territory in every direction. He's 200 miles deep in German-held land. No way to call for help, his only weapon a .45 caliber pistol loaded with 7 bullets. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink. It's November in the heart of Europe. Nighttime temperatures are plunging below freezing. The cold math of staying alive tells a grim story. When American aviators get shot down over Nazi-occupied ground, only 23% manage to avoid being caught and make it back to friendly forces. The remaining 77% either rot away in prisoner camps like Stalag Luft 3 or disappear into unmarked burial sites. Bruce Carr is about to shatter every survival statistic ever recorded about downed airmen, because within the next 4 days, he won't just escape enemy territory. He's going to hijack one of Germany's most sophisticated warplanes and pilot it back home. Bruce Ward Carr came into this world on January 28, 1924. In Union Springs, New York. His early years were pretty ordinary except for one extraordinary thing. When he was just 15 years old, back in 1939, Bruce Carr got his first taste of flying. That particular year carries weight. In September of 1939, German forces stormed into Poland. The Second World War had begun. A teenage farm boy living in rural New York had no way of knowing that before 5 years passed, he'd be locked in aerial combat with Messerschmitts above Berlin. But somehow, deep down, he must have understood that flying was rapidly becoming the most critical ability any young man could have. He didn't learn in some military academy or official aviation school. A hometown crop duster pilot called Earl gave the kid a chance to handle the controls of his old biplane. One summer day changed everything, and Carr was completely hooked. By his 16th birthday, he'd logged more hours in the air than most Army Air Corps trainees. On September 3, 1942, Carr walks into a recruitment office and joins the United States Army Air Forces. He's barely 18. During his time at the Aviation Cadet Training Facility, something remarkable happens. His flight instructor turns out to be the exact same person who taught him to fly 3 years back. Earl had enlisted as well. He glances at Carr's paperwork, notices the 240 flight hours already recorded, and immediately puts him forward for the fast-track program. By August of 1943, Carr earns his wings as a flight officer. By February 1944, he's crossing the Atlantic to England, where he's assigned to the 380th Fighter Squadron, part of the 363rd Fighter Group, under the 9th Air Force. His first mission involves mastering the P-51 Mustang. The P-51 stands as the greatest propeller-driven combat aircraft humanity ever produced. The specifications speak for themselves. It can cover 1,650 miles on drop tanks, plenty of range to protect bomber formations all the way from England to Berlin and back again. Maximum velocity hits 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. The plane can climb to 41,900 feet. Its weaponry consists of 6.35 caliber M2 Browning machine guns carrying 1,880 rounds combined. That's enough destructive power to tear a German bomber to pieces in just a 2-second firing burst. Before the P-51D showed up in significant numbers, American bombing missions in daylight suffered devastating casualties. The 8th Air Force watched 60 bombers go down during a single raid on Schweinfurt back in October 1943 without fighter protection. The B-17s and B-24s became easy prey for Luftwaffe interceptors. The Mustang transformed the entire air war. For the first time ever, American fighters possessed the range to escort bombers to their targets deep in Germany and escort them safely home. German aviators nicknamed them the long-nosed bastards. The Luftwaffe started losing veteran pilots at a rate far exceeding their training school's ability to produce replacements. Carr absolutely falls for this machine. The cockpit seems custom-made for his frame. Every control responds perfectly to his touch. The forward visibility is outstanding, and the raw power feels absolutely thrilling. He christens his aircraft Angel's Playmate. He has absolutely no clue that within 8 months, he'll find himself sitting in a completely different cockpit, one covered with German writing and bearing a swastika painted on its tail. March 8, 1944 marks Flight Officer Carr's baptism by fire. He catches sight of a Messerschmitt Bf 109 over German territory and immediately pursues. The enemy pilot attempts escape by diving straight down, skimming just above the forest canopy. Carr stays right on his tail. The chase stretches across 40 miles at velocities exceeding 400 miles per hour, both machines barely clearing the German woodlands. Carr squeezes the trigger. His bullets fly wide. He fires another burst. A single round clips the 109's port wing. The German pilot loses his nerve. He yanks back on the stick and punches out, but there's not enough altitude. His parachute fails to fully inflate. The pilot slams into the earth at 60 miles per hour. The 109 cartwheels into a hillside. Carr flies back to base thinking he'll receive praise. Instead, his squadron commander summons him to his office. Carr, that was the most dangerously aggressive flying I've witnessed in my entire career. You almost got yourself killed pursuing that German into the tree line. You're being reassigned. The kill doesn't even count officially. Technically speaking, Carr never shot the aircraft down. The pilot basically killed himself during his panicked escape attempt. It's the first clear sign that Bruce Carr's brain operates differently from other aviators. What others label as dangerous recklessness, he recognizes as tactical opportunity. What others perceive as absolute boundaries, he interprets as flexible guidelines. May of 1944 brings Carr's transfer to the 353rd Fighter Squadron, 354th Fighter Group, known as the Pioneer Mustang Group because they were the very first Army Air Forces unit in Europe to take P-51s into actual combat. These pilots represent the absolute elite of Mustang aviation. Carr fits in immediately. On June 17, 1944, just 11 days following the D-Day invasion, Carr records his first official victory, sharing the credit for an Fw-190 destroyed over the Normandy beaches. 2 months pass and he makes second lieutenant. September 12, 1944 finds Carr's flight strafing a German aerodrome, obliterating several Junkers Ru-88 bombers sitting on the ground. During their return journey, they spot 30 Fw-190s 2,000 feet below their current altitude. Carr doesn't waste a second thinking about it. He rolls into a dive. Over the next 3 minutes, he blasts 3 German fighters from the sky. When his wingman's aircraft takes damage, Carr personally escorts him the entire distance back to safe territory, sacrificing the chance for additional kills to ensure his fellow pilot's safety. They award him the Silver Star, the second highest military decoration for combat valor. October 29, 1944, sees Carr destroying 2 Bf-109s over Germany. His confirmed kill total now stands at 7.5. He's officially earned ace status. 4 days later, everything goes wrong. November 2, 1944, Carr crashes hard into the frozen Czechoslovakian terrain. Parachute landings are never gentle. Affairs, his ankle twists badly on impact. It's not broken, but severely sprained. He quickly gathers up the silk canopy and conceals it beneath dead leaves. The Germans will definitely search for him. They always mount search operations. He's got perhaps 20 minutes before patrol units show up. Carr knows the airfield he was attacking sits roughly 5 miles to the north. He understands the Germans will naturally assume he'll head south or west, trying to reach Allied-controlled territory. He realizes his survival hinges entirely on doing something they won't anticipate. So he moves north straight toward the enemy. The reasoning seems backwards, but it's actually brilliant. The Germans will fan outward from where he landed, operating under the assumption that he's fleeing away from them. They'll never expect him to advance closer to their military installation. And if he's going to live through this, he desperately needs provisions, something to eat, something to drink, possibly a better weapon. That airfield possesses all 3 things he needs. Day 1 passes with Carr pushing through dense forest, carefully avoiding any roads, moving only during darkness. His thin flight suit offers almost no protection against the cold. His twisted ankle throbs painfully with each step he takes. He hasn't consumed any food in 18 hours. Day 2 brings him to a small stream where he drinks deeply. The water is so cold it numbs his entire throat. He catches sight of a German patrol just 200 yards away and lies completely still in a muddy ditch. For 2 solid hours while they methodically pass by his position, Day 3 makes the hunger absolutely unbearable. Carr's body is burning through roughly 4,000 calories daily just maintaining core temperature. He's eaten exactly nothing. His system has begun breaking down his own muscle tissue for energy. He reaches a decision. Tomorrow morning he'll surrender to the Germans. The Luftwaffe generally treats captured enemy pilots more humanely than the regular Wehrmacht or the dreaded SS. Aviators share a code of honor. They show respect to fellow flyers, regardless of which side they fight. Fr. Carr personally knows pilots who've done time in Luft 3. They describe the experience as mind-numbingly boring but definitely survivable. 3 square meals daily, packages from the Red Cross, correspondence from loved ones back home. That beats slowly starving to death alone in a Czechoslovakian wilderness. Day 4, late afternoon arrives. Carr finally reaches the perimeter of the German airfield. He's concealed himself in the tree line overlooking the eastern boundary. Through gaps in the branches, he observes hangars, fuel tanker trucks, and various aircraft. Mostly FW-190s with a handful of Bf-109s scattered among them. His plan is simple: wait until morning light, then approach the main entrance with both hands raised high. But as darkness begins settling in, Carr notices something interesting. There's a revetment positioned 80 yards from where he's hiding. A Focke-Wulf Fw-190 sits inside it, partially hidden under camouflage netting. 2 German mechanics are actively working on the fighter beneath portable worklights. Carr watches their every move. The mechanics verify the fuel level. Tanks are completely full. They fire up the engine, and the unmistakable roar of the BMW-801 radial echoes across the field. They cycle the propeller mechanism, examine the magnetos, perform what appears to be a thorough pre-flight checklist. Then they shut everything down, throw a cover over the cockpit, and casually walk back toward the main hangar buildings. That FW-190 is completely ready to fly. Carr's mind starts working through the mathematics. He's never flown any German aircraft before. He doesn't understand a single word of German. He hasn't got the slightest idea where the controls are located, how to start the engine properly, or how the landing gear mechanism operates, but he absolutely knows how to fly. He's accumulated over 500 hours of combat flying time. Every aircraft ever built has a throttle lever, a control stick, and rudder pedals. The fundamental physics remain identical regardless of whether the instrument labels are printed in German. And he's staring directly at a fully fueled combat fighter with apparently no security guard. The surrender plan vanishes from his mind completely. Carr waits patiently until 3 o'clock in the morning. The airfield sits quiet. Just a skeleton crew pulling night watch duty. Zero activity anywhere near that revetment. He makes his move. 80 yards of totally exposed ground stretches before him. Absolutely no cover whatsoever. If anyone happens to glance in his direction, he's dead instantly. Carr covers that distance in 40 seconds, staying as low as physically possible. His injured ankle screams in protest with every single step. The FW-190 looks much bigger than he anticipated. The wingspan measures 34 feet. Length runs 29 feet. Empty weight tips the scales at 7,000 pounds. Nearly a full ton heavier than his familiar P-51, the cockpit sits elevated, protected by 30mm armored glass panels. The BMW 801 engine dominates the entire nose section. It's a 14-cylinder air-cooled radial power plant producing 1,700 horsepower. The Focke-Wulf Fw 190 represents Germany's premier fighter aircraft. First introduced into combat in 1941, it outperformed the legendary Spitfire so completely that British engineers rushed to develop improved variants just to remain competitive. German pilots affectionately called it Würger, meaning the butcher bird. Allied pilots simply called it Trouble. The specific aircraft Carr has just approached is most likely an 8 variant, the most commonly deployed model throughout late 1944. Standard armament includes two 13mm MG 131 machine guns mounted in the cowling. 4 20mm MG 151 cannons are positioned in the wings. Top speed reaches 408 miles per hour. Combat range extends roughly 500 miles. It's an absolutely lethal weapon in the hands of a skilled pilot. Carr is definitely not a skilled FW-190 pilot. He's never even sat in one before this moment. He's never laid eyes on the interior of one. Everything he knows about this particular aircraft comes exclusively from gun camera footage showing them exploding into fireballs. Carr climbs carefully onto the wing. The canopy isn't locked. He slides it backward and drops himself into the cockpit. The first thing that strikes him immediately is he can't read anything at all. Every single label, every gauge, every switch is printed in German. The instrument panel resembles a solid wall of completely incomprehensible Gothic lettering. The second thing he notices is the cockpit feels significantly more cramped than his P-51. His knees press uncomfortably against the instrument panel. The control stick falls naturally into his right hand. The throttle sits on the left side, identical to American designs. Some aspects of aviation are truly universal. Carr has approximately 4 hours remaining until sunrise. He uses every single minute productively. He traces wiring harnesses with his fingers. He identifies individual gauges purely by their physical position. Airspeed indicators are typically positioned top left. Altimeters go top center. Engine monitoring instruments cluster on the right side. He locates the fuel selector valve, the magneto switches, and the propeller pitch control. The starter mechanism represents the critical unknown. In the P-51, it's a straightforward electrical system. In this FW-190, he's completely guessing. On the right side of the cockpit, he discovers a T-shaped handle with German text printed beside it. The word looks somewhat like it might say starter. He pulls the handle. Absolutely nothing happens. He pushes it instead. A mechanical whining sound fills the cockpit interior. It's an inertia starter mechanism winding up like some giant clockwork toy. He allows it to spin for 10 seconds, then 20 seconds. Then he pulls the handle back. The BMW 801 coughs once, catches, and explodes into thunderous life. The noise level is absolutely apocalyptic. 1,700 horsepower at idle throttle still sounds like an approaching thunderstorm. Every single German soldier on this entire airfield will definitely hear it. Carr has mere seconds to act. He doesn't have time to locate the runway. Doesn't have time to figure out the brakes or flaps or radio equipment. He simply shoves the throttle lever forward violently. The FW-190 lurches into motion. The tail section rises almost instantly. This aircraft is distinctly nose-heavy, practically eager to fly. Through the pre-dawn darkness, Carr aims between two hangar buildings. Ground crew personnel are emerging from buildings, shouting urgently, pointing at him, 60 miles per hour, 70. The hangars rush toward him at terrifying speed. At 90 miles per hour, Carr hauls back hard on the control stick. The FW-190 launches itself into the air, clearing the hangar rooftops by what feels like mere inches. He's airborne in a stolen German fighter 200 miles behind enemy lines. Now, the really difficult part begins. The FW-190's cockpit remains a complete nightmare of unfamiliar systems and controls. But Carr methodically solves problems one at a time. Landing gear mechanism. He finds a lever on the left console panel and pulls it firmly. A satisfying mechanical thunk resonates through the airframe. The gear retracts smoothly. The aircraft immediately accelerates. Compass heading. He identifies the gyroscopic compass instrument. Orients himself toward west-southwest, toward France, toward Allied-controlled territory. Altitude management. He climbs initially to 500 feet, then reconsiders that decision. At higher altitude, he's perfectly visible to German radar installations, to German fighter patrols, to German anti-aircraft batteries tracking every object that moves. Through their airspace, he drops down to treetop level instead. 50 feet above the ground, 280 miles per hour. The Czechoslovakian forest transforms into nothing but a green blur rushing beneath his wings. This is absolutely insane flying. One tiny mistake, one brief moment of lost concentration, and he'll cartwheel through those trees at 300 miles per hour. But at treetop level, he's completely invisible to radar systems. He's too low for flak batteries to engage effectively. He's moving too fast for ground troops to get any kind of targeting solution. The fuel gauge shows tanks still full. The FW-190 possesses a range of approximately 500 miles. France lies roughly 200 miles away. He's got some margin for navigational error. For 45 solid minutes, Carr flies due west. The sun gradually rises behind him. The terrain slowly changes from dense forest to open farmland to the heavily scarred battlefields of eastern France. He crosses the front lines, and that's precisely when his problems genuinely intensify. Allied anti-aircraft gunners see exactly what their training and experience tells them to see. A German FW-190 flying at low altitude directly toward Allied positions. They immediately open fire. 50 caliber tracer rounds arc toward Carr from literally every direction. He's taking hostile fire from his own side. He has no radio to identify himself, absolutely no way to signal that he's friendly. The FW-190 still wears its German markings. The black cross is painted on both wings, the swastika emblazoned on the tail section. Carr does the only thing possible under these circumstances. Fly even lower and even faster. He drops to 20 feet above the ground, hedge-hopping. The propeller wash kicks up dust clouds from the dirt roads below. French civilians throw themselves into roadside ditches as he screams overhead at tremendous speed. American soldiers fire their rifles at him desperately. It seems like every gun in France is shooting at Bruce Carr. He later estimates that every single 50 caliber machine gun in existence took shots at him during that 30-mile sprint toward his home base. The FW-190 absorbs multiple hits. He can distinctly hear the impacts, feel the shudders running through the airframe, but that solid German engineering holds together. The aircraft continues flying. Ahead he recognizes his airfield. A 66 at Orconti, France, home base of the 354th Fighter Group. He lines up for his landing approach. No time for proper traffic pattern work. No time for radio communication calls. The anti-aircraft batteries are already actively tracking his position. That's when he discovers the final critical problem. The landing gear absolutely refuses to come down. Carr pulls the lever repeatedly. Nothing happens. He pumps it desperately. Still nothing. He frantically searches for a backup system, an emergency release mechanism, anything at all. The FW-190's landing gear operates on hydraulic pressure. There's a selector valve that directs that pressure either toward retraction or extension. Carr doesn't know this technical detail. He doesn't know which specific lever controls that valve. He doesn't realize that he's been pulling the completely wrong handle for the last 5 minutes below his position. The 354th's anti-aircraft gun crews are loading their 40mm Bofors guns. A German fighter aircraft is circling their field. They're preparing to blast him out of the sky. Carr makes a final decision. He's going to belly land this thing. He lines up with the grass strip beside the main concrete runway. Lowers the flaps, that lever at least he managed to figure out, and cuts the throttle completely. The Fw-190 sinks. Rapidly, 100 feet, 50 feet, 20 feet. The aircraft slams into the grass at 90 miles per hour, slides for 300 yards, throws up a massive rooster tail of mud and debris, and finally grinds to a complete stop. Carr is somehow still alive. Within mere seconds, the Fw-190 is completely surrounded. Military police personnel, rifles raised and ready, screaming at the pilot to exit the cockpit immediately. They're expecting a German prisoner. They're expecting to capture an enemy combatant. The canopy slides back slowly. A mud-splattered American wearing a torn flight suit climbs awkwardly onto the wing. I'm Captain Carr from this goddamn squadron. Nobody believes him whatsoever. He's been officially missing for 4 full days. He's supposed to be either dead or captured, and he just belly-landed a German fighter directly on their airfield. The MPs keep their rifles trained on him until a staff car arrives. Colonel George Bickle, commanding officer of the 354th Fighter Group, steps out of the vehicle and surveys the scene. The destroyed Fw-190, the mud-covered pilot, the bewildered military police surrounding Carr. Bickle looks at him and says, "Where in the hell have you been, and what have you been doing now?" The story spreads through the Army Air Forces like wildfire. The pilot who stole a German plane. The only American in the entire European theater to take off in a P-51 and land in an Fw-190, but Carr's war is far from finished. 5 months later, April 2, 1945, near Schweinfurt, Germany, First Lieutenant Carr is leading a flight of 4 P-51s on a reconnaissance patrol. They're cruising at 15,000 feet when Carr spots movement above their position. German fighters, more than he can possibly count quickly. A massive formation stacked from 18,000 to 25,000 feet. Carr does a rapid mental estimate. 60 aircraft, possibly more. Bf-109s and Fw-190s flying mixed together. It's the largest concentration of German fighters he's encountered in his entire combat career. He has 4 P-51s. The German formation is enormous. Bf-109 G-10s and Fw-190 D-9s. The absolute latest variants of both aircraft types, relatively. Fresh pilots. The Luftwaffe has been hemorrhaging experienced aviators since early 1944, but 60 aircraft remain 60 aircraft. Regardless of pilot skill levels. Standard tactical doctrine dictates immediate evasion. 4 against 60 represents pure suicide. The Germans possess altitude advantage, overwhelming numerical superiority, and superior positional advantage. Every training manual ever written clearly states disengage and report. Let the bomber, escort squadrons know what's approaching. Get out alive to fight another day. Bruce Carr has never shown much interest in what training manuals recommend. He keys his radio transmitter, engaging. His wingmen don't hesitate for 1 second. They've flown with Carr before. They understand exactly what he's capable of accomplishing. They know that when Carr says engaging, he absolutely means it. The 4 Mustangs climb directly into the German formation. What happens next becomes one of the most extraordinary air battles in the entire Second World War. The Germans don't anticipate any attack whatsoever. They're flying in a loose defensive formation, conserving precious fuel, probably heading to intercept an incoming bomber stream. 4 American fighters climbing directly into their midst makes absolutely no tactical sense. Carr exploits the confusion masterfully. He slips into the rear of their formation, positions himself directly behind a Bf-109 and opens fire. The German pilot never sees him coming. The 109 explodes violently. Carr immediately shifts to another target. An Fw-190, 3 seconds of concentrated 50 caliber fire. The Focke-Wulf rolls inverted and plummets toward the earth below. The German formation begins scattering in every direction. They don't know how many Americans are actually attacking them. They can't determine where the fire is originating from. Carr moves through them like a predatory Wulf through a flock of sheep, selecting targets, firing precisely, moving constantly. Third kill, fourth kill, fifth kill. In the span of just 3 minutes, First Lieutenant Bruce Carr shoots down 5 German aircraft. His 3 wingmen account for 10 additional kills. 4 American pilots, 15 German aircraft completely destroyed. 0 American losses whatsoever. When their ammunition finally runs out, Carr leads his flight safely home. The surviving Germans, 45 of them, scatter across the German countryside in complete disarray. April 9, 1945 brings Bruce Carr's promotion to captain. The Distinguished Service Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor itself, is awarded for his actions on April 2. The official citation reads, completely disregarding his personal safety and the enemy's overwhelming numerical superiority and tactical advantage of altitude, he led his element in a direct attack on the hostile force, personally destroying 5 enemy aircraft and damaging still another. Carr becomes the last ace in a day in the European theater of World War II. No American pilot will match this achievement before Germany surrenders unconditionally. By war's end, he's flown 172 combat missions and accumulated 14 or 15 confirmed aerial victories. The historical records differ slightly, plus numerous ground kills. He's 21 years old. The war concludes. Bruce Carr stays in uniform. He joins the Acrojets, America's very first jet aerobatic demonstration team, flying F-80 Shooting Stars. Then Korea arrives, where he flies 57 combat missions in F-86 Sabres with the 336th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. He commands the 336th from 1955 to 1956, Colonel's eagles on his shoulders now. The farm kid from Union Springs, New York, running an entire fighter squadron. Then comes Vietnam. Colonel Carr, now 44 years old, flies 286 combat missions in F-100 Super Sabres. Close air support missions, bombing runs, strafing attacks. The exact same type of work he performed 24 years earlier in a different war, flying different aircraft. 3 wars spanning 3 aircraft generations. 515. Total combat missions. He retires from active service in 1973. April 25, 1998, St. Cloud, Florida. Bruce Ward Carr dies from prostate cancer. He's 74 years old. They bury him with full military honors in Arlington National Cemetery. Section 64, grave number 6922, among the heroes of every American war since the Revolution. Within sight of the tomb of the unknown soldier. Across the river from the Lincoln Memorial. The headstone lists his rank, Colonel, United States Air Force. It lists his decorations. Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Distinguished. Flying Cross with clusters, Air Medal with clusters, Purple Heart. It lists his wars. World War II, Korea, Vietnam. It doesn't mention the Focke-Wulf. It doesn't mention those 4 days in the Czechoslovakian forest. It doesn't mention the belly landing with no gear. The MPs pointing rifles directly at his face. The commanding officer asking, "Where the hell have you been?" Some stories simply don't fit on headstones. There are 2 distinct ways to tell Bruce Carr's story. The first is pure legend. The downed pilot who hijacked a German fighter from an active enemy airfield figured out the controls through pure trial and error, and flew 200 miles back to Allied territory while literally every gun in Europe shot at him. The second is the documented historical record. The ace with 15 kills, the Silver Star recipient, the Distinguished Service Cross winner, the man who led 4 aircraft against 60 and emerged victorious. Both versions are absolutely true. Both are genuinely remarkable. But here's what truly matters. In November 1944, an American pilot found himself completely alone, effectively unarmed, and stranded 200 miles behind enemy lines. The rational choice was immediate surrender. The safe choice was giving up. Bruce Carr chose something completely different. He looked at a German fighter aircraft covered with unfamiliar instruments and saw not an insurmountable obstacle, but an incredible opportunity. He climbed into a cockpit he'd never seen before, Started an engine he'd never operated, and flew an aircraft he'd never even touched. Not because he was reckless or foolish, but because he fundamentally refused to accept that his options were limited to only those that seemed possible. 4 months later, confronted with 60 enemy fighters and just 4 friendly aircraft, he made that same calculation. The rational choice was immediate retreat. The safe choice was survival. He chose attack instead, and 15 German pilots never returned home that day. In 1997, 1 year before his death, Colonel Carr flew one final time. Kermit Week's fantasy. A flight museum in Florida had invited him for an airshow appearance. Carr, now 73 years old, arrived flying a P-51 Mustang, his own aircraft maintained in perfect flying condition. He came screaming over the crowd at 300 knots, 50 feet off the deck. The exact same approach he'd used 50 years earlier, flying a stolen Focke-Wulf into a French airfield while his own side desperately tried to shoot him down. Some things apparently never change with age. The crowd watched a 73-year-old man throw a World War II fighter aircraft through maneuvers that would challenge pilots half his age. Loops, rolls, high-G turns that pressed him deep into his seat at forces that would gray out younger men. When he finally landed, someone asked him what he was thinking up there. He just shrugged. Same thing I was always thinking. What's this? Airplane capable of? What am I capable of? Let's find out. That's the Bruce Carr story, not the stolen fighter. Not the 15 kills? Not the 3 wars and 515 combat missions. The story is actually much simpler than all that. The story is about a pilot who looked at impossible odds and asked himself one simple question: what else can I do?